"You can stay in the garage, old woman," my son told me. And I swear, for a moment, the whole world went quiet. It was cold that night. The air smelled like dust and anger. I stood there in the doorway of the house I had built with my own hands, the house I prayed in, cried in, loved in, the house where I raised that same son who now looked at me like I was a stray dog he found on the street. When he spoke those words, something inside me cracked. Not loudly, not wildly, but quietly, like thin glass breaking under a slow, heavy weight. I lifted my eyes and looked straight at him. He didn't look away. He didn't blink. He meant it. And right then, I knew exactly what I had to do. I sold the house that same night. But what happened after I sold it? What happened when he found out? What happened when the truth began to unfold around him, like a tight rope around his neck? That is where the real story begins. If you're watching this, tell me the time and the country you're watching from. My name is Margaret Lewis, 70 years old, a widow, a mother of one, a woman who spent her whole life believing kindness was enough to win people over, a woman who worked 2 jobs to put her son through school after her husband died young, a woman who slept only 4 hours a night for years because life demanded more of me than I had to give. But I gave anyway. I raised my son, Andrew, with soft hands and a warm heart. I taught him to say please and thank you. I taught him to help the weak. I taught him to stand tall. I taught him to be kind. Funny, isn't it? How the people you teach kindness can become the ones who hurt you the most. My husband Michael passed away when I was 46. Heart attack, quick, cruel, unfair. I thought grief was the worst pain I'd ever feel. I was wrong. Because nothing hurts like being rejected by the child you carried for 9 months, raised for decades, and loved with everything you had. But this is not the part where I cry. This is the part where I tell you how the story really started. It began 2 months before that night. I had been feeling weak on my left side. My doctor said it might be the early signs of nerve problems and that I needed rest. But rest was something I never learned how to do. I cleaned the house. I cooked meals. I watched my grandkids when Andrew and his wife Linda needed help. And I never complained. Maybe that was my mistake. Maybe I should have spoken up sooner. One evening, I sat in the living room with my granddaughter Ellie. She was only 10, sweet girl, soft laugh. She held my hand and said, "Grandma, you should move in with us, so you won't be alone." That single sentence warmed my heart. But little did I know, her parents were having a very different conversation behind my back. Andrew had been struggling with his job. Money was tight. Bills were high. And Linda, well, she never liked me much. She always said I talked too much, helped too much, cared too much. Imagine that, caring too much. One evening, I heard them whispering in the kitchen. "She's old, Andrew," Linda said. "She needs help. I can't keep watching her trip or forget things. She should stay somewhere else." "Where?" he whispered. "I don't know, but she can't live in this house forever." My heart dropped, but I stayed silent. I didn't want to cause problems. I told myself I was imagining things. I told myself they didn't mean it. I told myself I was still loved. But love doesn't whisper like that. Love doesn't hide behind kitchen doors. The day everything changed, I cooked a big dinner for them. Roast chicken, mashed potatoes, cornbread, the good things I used to make when Andrew was little. I wanted to feel needed again. I wanted to feel like a mother again. But instead of thanking me, Linda rolled her eyes. "Why is she always doing too much?" she murmured. I ignored it, even though it burned a hole straight through my chest. Later that night, I slipped on the stairs. My leg twisted and I cried out. When Andrew ran downstairs, I expected his arms, his worry, his comfort. Instead, he said, "Mom, you're getting older. We can't keep doing this." "I'm sorry," I whispered. "It's not about sorry," Linda snapped. "It's about space. It's about responsibility. It's about the future." I nodded, because I did not have the strength to argue. But then came the night of the sentence, the night of the line that changed everything. I walked into the living room to ask if they wanted tea. Andrew turned around. His eyes were cold, his voice was sharp, and he said, "You can stay in the garage, old woman." Just like that, as if I were nothing. The garage, a place for tools, boxes, dust. Not for someone who raised him, not for someone who loved him, not for someone who stayed up nights caring for him. I stared at him. He stared back. And something in me woke up. Not anger, not rage, not even sadness. Power. Quiet, steady power. The kind you only feel when you have lost everything else. So I went upstairs, packed my 2 bags, walked out of that house, and called a realtor. I sold the house my husband left to me. The house Andrew thought would one day be his. The house he had plans for. The house he counted on. And when I signed the papers that night, I smiled. But here is where the story shifts. Because the next morning, when Andrew came home and found strangers walking through what he believed was his future, something happened. Something sharp. Something loud. Something that would change his life forever. I wish I could tell you Andrew took the news calmly. I wish I could say he stood still, breathed deep, and accepted what he had caused. But that would be a lie. And if I have learned anything at 70 years old, it's that lies are poison, slow and sweet, but deadly in the end. The moment Andrew saw the "for sale," "sold" sign outside the house, his face went empty. Not angry, not confused, empty. The way a person looks when their mind refuses to understand reality. He walked slowly up the driveway, his eyes scanning the strangers moving in and out, measuring rooms, checking windows, talking about paint colors. He turned to me. "Mom, what is this?" he whispered. You would think a whisper is gentle, but no. His whisper felt like a blade pressed against thin skin. Before I could answer, a tall woman in a blue blazer stepped out from the hallway holding a stack of papers. The realtor, a kind woman. She smiled when she saw me. "Mrs. Lewis, the buyers want to know if they can keep the garden shed." Andrew cut her off sharply. "She's not Mrs. Lewis. She's my mother, and this is our house." The realtor blinked, confused, then looked at me for help. I lifted my chin. My voice was calm. Too calm. "No, Andrew, it was our house, but now it's not. I sold it." His mouth fell open. "You what?" I repeated it so he would hear the weight of the decision I made, the decision he forced me into, word for word. I sold the house. He stumbled back as if he had been struck. His hands shook. His voice cracked. But why? You didn't talk to me. You didn't even tell me. Mom, what were you thinking?" I stared at him. Really stared. At the boy I raised. The boy I fed from my own tired hands. The boy who used to hug me after school and say, "Mom, you're my favorite person." But that boy was gone. Replaced by a man who had looked me in the face and told me to stay in a garage. So I said gently, "You made your decision first, Andrew." His eyes filled with anger. "What decision? What are you even talking about?" "You told me to sleep in the garage," I said plainly. The realtor gasped softly. One of the buyers froze mid-step. Even the birds outside stopped singing. Andrew's face went red. "That's not Mom. Listen, Linda and I were stressed. We didn't mean it like that." Yes. Always the excuses. Always the reasons. Always the "we didn't mean it," even though the words came easy when they were hurting me. I turned away before the tears could gather. I had already cried enough for a lifetime. But that wasn't the extreme event of this chapter. Not yet. What came next was far worse. Linda's car rolled into the driveway. She stepped out, heels clicking, her face twisted in annoyance even before she reached the porch. "What now?" I heard shouting from down the street. She stopped when she saw the crowd. "What is going on here?" Andrew rubbed his forehead, pacing like a man losing his grip. "She sold the house," he muttered. Linda blinked, then laughed. Actually laughed. "She did what?" I held my bag in my hand and looked at her calmly. "I sold it." She stared at me as if I had spoken in another language. No, no, you didn't. You would never do that. This house is supposed to be Andrew's one day. It belongs to our family. I took a step toward her. No, Linda. It belongs to me. And you made it clear last night that I didn't belong here anymore. Her smile slowly faded. Her eyes went cold. You're being dramatic, she spat. We were overwhelmed. You know Andrew didn't mean it. You're overreacting. My body may be old, I said, but my mind is still sharp enough to know when I'm not wanted. She crossed her arms. So you punish us by selling the house? Just like that? Just like that. Linda scoffed. You're unbelievable. But before she could continue, something sharp sliced through the tense air. A scream. Not from any of us. From behind us. One of the buyers rushed out from the backyard, pale, breathless. Someone is lying on the ground back there. We all froze. What? Andrew shouted. The buyer pointed, shaking. Behind the shed. I think they fainted. My heart jumped into my throat. Andrew ran first. Linda followed. I struggled behind them as fast as my old knees would let me. The realtor gasped and hurried after us. The buyers followed too, murmuring nervously. We turned the corner toward the backyard. And there, lying in the grass behind the shed, was a man I had not seen in years. A man who should not have been there. A man whose presence made my breath stop. His clothes were dirty. His face was thin. His hands were trembling. And when he opened his eyes and looked straight at me, the world tilted beneath my feet. He whispered my name. Itzy Deverable? My heart stopped, because there is only one person alive who used to say my name like that. Only one man whose voice carried that much history. Only one man who vanished from my life without warning 23 years ago, leaving behind a wound I never healed. Michael? I breathed. My dead husband was lying in my backyard, alive. The world spun. My vision blurred. Andrew yelled something I couldn't hear. Linda grabbed her phone. Someone shouted for water. Someone else screamed for an ambulance. But all I saw was him. All I heard was that voice. All I felt was the ground pulling me down. And then everything went black. When I opened my eyes, everything was blurry. I smelled something sharp, cleaning chemicals, maybe. I heard a soft beeping sound somewhere near my ear. A cold breeze brushed across my skin. And for a moment, I didn't know where I was or what had happened. Then the pieces returned in short, painful flashes. The house. Andrew shouting. Linda crying. The buyer screaming. And then, the man behind the shed. The man who should have been dead. The man who whispered my name like a prayer. Michael. My husband. My heart jolted, and I tried to sit up too fast. Whoa, slow down, a voice murmured. It wasn't Andrew. It wasn't Linda. It was Ellie, my sweet granddaughter. She sat beside my hospital bed, legs swinging off the chair, her small hands gripping mine. Her eyes were red, like she had been crying for hours. Grandma, she whispered. You scared me. I touched her cheek with my weak hand. Where am I? I asked softly. The hospital, she said. You fainted in the backyard. Dad brought you here. Her voice trembled, but she tried so hard to be brave. Children always do. They see everything, even when adults pretend they don't. Is your father here? I asked. She nodded. In the hallway. He and Mom are talking to the doctor. They don't know I'm in here. I squeezed her hand gently. Thank you for staying with me, sweetheart. You're my grandma, she said simply, like that was enough reason in the world. I rested my hand on her hair, letting that small comfort hold me together. But as soon as I closed my eyes, Michael's face appeared again. Pale, thin, alive, impossible. I tried to push myself higher on the bed, ignoring the ache in my arms. Ellie, I whispered, did you see anyone else in the backyard? She looked confused. You mean the man? My breath caught. What did you see? A man was lying on the ground, she said quietly. He looked like he was hurt. Dad and Mom freaked out when they saw him. Dad yelled at him. Mom tried to call the police, but the doctors came and took him away first. "He's here?" I asked, my voice trembling. She nodded. "They put him in another room. I heard Dad say he shouldn't be here. He kept saying, 'This is impossible.' And Mom kept saying, 'Keep Margaret away from him.'" "Keep me away?" Ellie looked worried. "Grandma, do you know him?" I opened my mouth, then closed it, because even though I had 1,000 answers in my mind, none of them made sense. None of them felt safe to say. I just whispered, "I'm not sure yet, sweetheart." Before she could ask more, the door burst open. Andrew rushed inside. His hair was messy, his eyes red like he hadn't slept, and his hands shook when he grabbed the foot of my bed. "Mom," he gasped, "thank God you're awake." Linda stepped in behind him, arms crossed, face tight. She didn't look relieved. She looked annoyed, like I had chosen a very inconvenient time to collapse. Typical. "Ellie, honey," she said sharply, "go wait outside. But I'm talking to Grandma now." Ellie lowered her head and slipped out of the room, giving me one last worried look before the door shut. Andrew pulled a chair to my bedside. "Mom," he said, breathing hard, "we have a situation." I stared at him, my voice low. "The man behind the shed." He swallowed hard. "Yes." "And?" I pressed. He hesitated. "Mom, the doctor said he kept asking for you. He kept saying your name, over and over, like he knew you." Linda jumped in. "Who is he, Margaret? Why does that dirty man know you? Why was he in our backyard? What was he doing there?" I didn't answer. Not because I didn't want to, but because I truly didn't know how. Michael, my husband, dead for 23 years, buried, mourned, gone, and now lying in that same hospital building? Andrew leaned forward, voice cracking. "Mom, the police want to talk to him. They want to know who he is and why he was on our property, but the doctors won't let them yet because he keeps asking for you. He won't talk to anyone else." Linda folded her arms. "And we need to know if he's dangerous, if he's some crazy person, if this is some trick." I closed my eyes. If only they knew the truth I was wrestling with. If only they knew the memories clawing their way back into my mind, memories of the last night I saw Michael alive. Memories of an argument, a scream, a fall, blood, things I had locked away because grief was easier than truth. "Mom," Andrew whispered, "do you know him?" I forced myself to breathe slowly. "It looked like someone I knew," I said. "Who?" Linda snapped. I opened my mouth, and the door swung open again. A nurse stepped inside. "Mrs. Lewis, the man from the backyard is awake. He's insisting loudly on speaking to you." Andrew stood up quickly. "No, absolutely not. She's not going anywhere near him." The nurse glanced at me. "He's refusing treatment until he sees her, and he's getting agitated. If he keeps this up, we'll have to sedate him." Andrew turned to me, frantic. "Mom, please, tell them no. Tell them you don't know him." Linda nodded sharply. "This is ridiculous. He probably wants money. Old people are easy targets. We're not letting you go." But I had already made my decision. I removed the blanket, swung my legs over the side of the bed, and pushed myself to my feet. "Mom!" Andrew shouted. "Sit down. You just fainted." I steadied myself on the railing. "I'm going to see him," I said quietly. "You can't," Linda said firmly. I lifted my eyes and stared at her. "You told me to sleep in a garage, Linda. You don't tell me anything anymore." Andrew's face fell. He closed his mouth. The nurse stepped forward. "Mrs. Lewis, follow me, please." I walked slowly into the hallway, my heart pounding in my ears. Andrew followed behind me, trying to convince me to turn back. Linda grumbled under her breath. The sterile scent of the hospital stung my nostrils. Every step felt like walking into fire. Finally, the nurse stopped at a door. "He's inside." I gripped the handle, took a deep breath, and stepped in. The room was dim. A man sat on the bed, hooked to IVs, his hands trembling. His face was lined, bruised, and thinner than I remembered. But those eyes were the same. The same eyes that watched me walk down the aisle. The same eyes that held mine when Andrew was born. The same eyes I saw the night everything went wrong. He looked directly at me. "Margaret," he whispered, voice weak but certain, "you're alive." I froze. And then he said something that shattered everything I thought I knew. "Did you ever tell Andrew the truth about what happened the night I disappeared?" The air vanished from my lungs. "The truth?" I whispered. He nodded slowly. "About the money." My heart slammed against my ribs. "What money?" Before I could speak, the machines beside him began to beep faster. His breathing grew rough. Nurses rushed forward. One shouted for help. Andrew grabbed my arm. "Mom, what is going on? What truth? What money? What is he talking about?" But I couldn't answer, because I didn't know what scared me more. That Michael was alive, or that he believed I knew something I didn't. Right as a nurse reached for the emergency button, Michael's trembling hand shot up and pointed directly at me. "She never told you," he gasped. "She never told you what she did." And right there, in that cold hospital room, my world cracked open again. I did not sleep the night I met Mrs. Turner again. My heart beat fast in my chest as I lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling of my small apartment. A storm pushed against the windows, making the glass rattle, but the real storm was inside me. The woman who helped raise my son. The woman my son now trusted more than me. She was back in my life, acting sweet, acting gentle, acting innocent. Yet I saw something in her eyes that night. Something cold, something hungry, something that wanted something from me. But I didn't know what. Not yet. The next morning, I walked to the kitchen to make tea, hoping warm water would settle my nerves. My hand trembled so much that the teaspoon clinked loudly against the cup. I sat down slowly, trying to breathe. I didn't want revenge to eat me alive, but every small thing my son said or did kept bringing back the sting of what he told me. "You can stay in the garage, old woman." His voice still echoed in my ears like a snake hissing. I told myself the same thing I had repeated for months. "Margaret, stay calm. You are planning something big, something careful, something they will never see coming." But then something happened that made everything even stranger. Around noon, my son called me. At first, I almost didn't pick up. He rarely called unless he wanted something from me, money, help, or emotional support. He never returned. But this time, his voice sounded different, almost shaky. "Mom, are you home?" "Yes, David," I answered flatly. "Mrs. Turner said you two met last night," he said. "She said she ran into you by accident." "By accident?" "That woman came to me on purpose. I knew it. She asked me to check on you," he continued. "She said you looked stressed. She said she was worried about you." My fingers tightened around the phone. She was inserting herself into the story, into my story. "Why? What did you tell her?" I asked softly. "That you're fine," he said. "But, Mom, are you?" His voice cracked on the last word. That surprised me. This was the same boy who told me to live in his garage. The same boy who made fun of my old clothes. The same boy who told me I was a burden. But now he sounded scared. Before I could answer him, someone knocked sharply at my apartment door. "Hold on," I whispered into the phone. I walked to the door slowly, my heart beating faster. When I opened it, my breath caught. 2 police officers stood there. "Ma'am," one said politely, "we need to ask you a few questions about your former home." I froze. For a moment, it felt like the entire world tilted sideways. My former home? The house I sold months ago? The same night my son kicked me out? "What? What about it?" I whispered. "There was an incident," the second officer said. "Someone reported suspicious activity." Suspicious activity? In my old house? Who would be there? Who would report something? My son didn't live there anymore. I didn't have the keys. No one I knew should be inside. Is someone hurt? I asked. We can't say yet, the officer answered calmly. But we were told you might know something. Me? I stepped back, shocked. I haven't been there in months. Then the first officer asked something that made the room spin around me. Ma'am, do you know a woman named Caroline Turner? My heart dropped like a stone into cold water. I gripped the doorframe. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Why was her name being mentioned by the police? Why was she connected to my former home? What had she done? And why did I suddenly feel that all of this, all of it, somehow tied back to me? Ma'am? The officer asked gently. Yes, I whispered. I know her. We were told she had a disagreement with you years ago, he said, and that she may have returned to your old house recently. Returned? I repeated. Returned for what? The officers glanced at each other. That's what we're trying to find out. A deep, heavy fear filled my chest. What had she told them? What had she told my son? What had she done inside my old home? But before the officers could continue their questions, something else happened, something that hit like a punch. My phone vibrated in my hand. A message from my son popped up on the screen. Mom, why is the police at my job asking about you and the house? My blood ran cold. Then came another message, seconds later. Mom, what did you do? I stared at the screen. The officers stared at me, and inside my chest, fear twisted into something else. Heat, anger, something sharper, something darker. Because I suddenly understood something very clearly. Someone was setting me up. Someone was pulling strings behind my back. Someone wanted to frame me for something connected to that house. And I knew exactly who that someone was. At that moment, as rain slammed against the windows and the officers waited for answers I didn't have, I felt something snap inside me. The quiet woman who spent her life giving, helping, forgiving, she was gone. In her place stood the woman I used to be before motherhood softened me. The woman who knew how to fight back. The woman who knew how to take revenge slowly and perfectly. I looked the officers in the eyes. Officer, I said softly, I think I know what's happening. They leaned forward slightly. But before I say anything, I continued, I need to show you something. I reached for my purse. Not because I was hiding anything dangerous, but because inside it was a small, folded piece of paper. A paper that Mrs. Turner slipped into my hand the night before. A paper I hadn't opened yet. A paper that now felt like a burning coal. Ma'am, the officer said carefully. What's that? I slowly unfolded it. My eyes scanned the words. And what I read made my knees almost buckle. It was a message, a warning, a threat. Written in neat handwriting I recognized instantly. It said, Margaret, stop talking to your son. Stop digging into the past, or your secrets will come out first. And below that, a single address, my old house. The officer saw my face change and stepped closer. Ma'am, what's wrong? But before I could answer, before I could even breathe, a loud knock shook the hallway outside my apartment. Not a normal knock, a hard, angry, pounding fist. The officers spun around. I froze. Because I recognized that knock, I had heard it before. Years ago, in a different home, during a different nightmare. And the voice on the other side sent a cold tremor down my spine. Margaret, open this door right now. I knew that voice. I wished I didn't. It belonged to the last person on earth I ever wanted to see again. And somehow, he had found me. The sound of his voice froze every muscle in my body. It was deep, loud, angry. A voice I had spent years trying to forget. The officers exchanged a quick look, then stepped toward the door. Ma'am, do you know this man? One asked. I didn't answer, because my mouth wouldn't move. My knees felt weak. My heart pounded so loudly it drowned out the storm outside. Then he pounded again. Margaret, open this door. Hearing my name in that tone made my skin crawl. The officers reached for their holsters. Sir, identify yourself, one shouted. But instead of answering, The man's shadow shifted under the door like he was pacing. "I'm her husband," he shouted back. "Now open this damn door." My breath left my chest. My husband. My dead husband. At least, that's what everyone believed. That's what I let everyone believe. That's what I told myself I would never have to face again. The officer turned to me sharply. "Ma'am, your husband. We were told he passed away." I swallowed. Hard. My voice came out as a whisper. "He was supposed to." Before they could ask anything else, the door handle jerked violently. "Margaret!" he roared again. "I know you're in there." The officers stepped in front of me. "Back away from the door," one shouted. But the man outside didn't listen. He slammed his shoulder into the door, shaking the frame. A second slam followed, and a third. Wood cracked. The door bent inward. One more hit, and he would be inside. "Sir, stop or you'll be detained," the officer yelled. But he didn't stop. He didn't even slow down. He wanted me. After all these years, he wanted me. Just as the officers prepared to draw their weapons, the door burst open, flying back on its hinges. Rain blew in behind him, and there he stood, tall, soaked, eyes burning with rage. A ghost resurrected. "Margaret," he growled, "we're not done." The officers moved fast. Hands up. He ignored them and stepped into the apartment, straight toward me. "Where is it?" he demanded. "Where's the deed?" My heart stopped. The deed. To the house I sold, the house he believed was still his. One officer blocked him, pushing him back. I said, "Hands up." But my husband grabbed the officer's arm and shoved him aside like he was made of paper. The other officer tried to grab him from behind, and they all stumbled into the hallway. I backed away, trembling so hard I almost fell. My husband kept shouting, "You think you can sell my house and run? You think you can erase me?" Everything was happening so fast. The scuffle, the shouting, the storm, the thunder shaking the building. Then, a single loud crack. A gunshot. I screamed. The officers froze. My husband stopped moving. For a moment, the whole hallway fell silent. He looked down slowly at his side, where blood began spreading across his shirt. Then he turned his head toward me. Even injured, his eyes were full of hatred. "This isn't over," he hissed. Then he collapsed on the floor. The officers rushed to restrain and check him. One called for an ambulance. The other tried to keep him from losing too much blood. I stood in the doorway, shaking, unable to understand how all the pieces fit together. Why was he alive? Why did Mrs. Turner know him? Why was my son caught in the middle? Then one of the officers looked up at me. "Ma'am, did you know your husband wasn't dead?" I opened my mouth, closed it, then whispered the truth I had hidden for decades. "I thought I killed him." The hallway went silent again. The officer blinked. My husband groaned on the floor. The storm roared outside. And I realized something terrifying. Mrs. Turner, my husband, the police, my son, the house. They were all connected. But how? Why now? And who was pulling the strings? Before I could think further, my phone buzzed again. I looked down at the screen and felt the blood drain from my face. A message from an unknown number. "He's alive. And there's more you don't know. Meet me at the house. Midnight. Come alone." Below it was a photo. A photo taken inside my old house. A photo of someone tied to a chair. Someone gagged. Someone crying. My son. My scream echoed down the hallway as the phone slipped from my hand and hit the floor. Everything in my life, every lie, every secret, every wound had just crashed together in one horrifying picture. And now, I had to go back to the one place I swore I would never enter again. The house I sold the night my son betrayed me. The house my husband believed was still his. The house Mrs. Turner was somehow tied to. The house where a deeper truth waited for me. I wiped my tears, lifted my chin, and whispered to myself, "Margaret, it's time." Then I stepped forward, ready to face whatever waited at midnight. Because revenge wasn't just a plan anymore. It was the only way to save my son.